So let me tell you just a very short bit about myself. My name is Jose Morales. I live in Slovenia, and I'm Peruvian. I started as an IT professional in the times of Microsoft. When I was a little boy, there was no internet, and I opened one of the first internet service providers in Peru, where I was born. Then I got in love with this Slovenian lady, and I moved to Europe. Since then, we've been in New York for a couple of years, working in innovation. But then I decided to come back to Europe. At that moment, I was 39 years old, and I was like, when is my crisis, my middle-age crisis coming? So I had to start getting ready for that. And the decision was, I'm not going to continue working with technology. So that was a humongous change that is having effects until today, right? First of all, I didn't know that there were other persons outside of my circle, right? I thought I knew everybody. But then, as soon as I started in a completely different environment, I knew I didn't know anybody. I had to start a network, etc. I was always fascinated with entrepreneurship, and that is still part of the topic, let's say, that where I interact. I shared earlier with some of you why I started thinking about fear and talking about fear. And it was because of a big question. How come that we don't learn from our failures? And that goes against what everybody says, right? In the startup community, there's a lot of fail fast, fail forward. And how do we learn from our failures? What do you learn from your failures? What I found is that we are basically learning the circumstances. So what happened? So what can I avoid doing? Or which is the scenario that produces this kind of failure? But what I found is that that doesn't work because the circumstances are always changing. So the exact scenario is not coming, and then it becomes very difficult to avoid the failure in any case. So fear was the answer that we found. Now, when I talk about fear, I'm not talking about instinct fear. Okay, so like protecting yourself or being scared of spiders or these kind of things. Basically, we're talking about the fear that you don't know you have. It doesn't have a name. And actually, you think you are that. So, for example, if I'm a perfectionist, right, I would sometimes even feel happy to share that I'm a perfectionist. Like, this is a good quality of my personality. And I'm not saying to anybody that basically the root of that perfectionism is a fear. It's a fear of not being good enough. Therefore, I push all my circumstances, everything around me, to be as perfect as possible so that that perfection is connected with me. Therefore, I can be accepted. Right? So, remember, it is a weird fear. It doesn't have a specific name. You don't necessarily know you have it. So, I often get a lot of resistance to my definition of fear, right? Especially if there's someone with a background in psychology and these kind of things. They would understand fear in multiple ways, and they have categories. So for me, it's just this one, the one that you don't know you have, but somehow is stopping you. Okay? Another word that I use for it is resistance. So let's make a simple check-in. Do you know Slido? Can you go to your telephone browser, go to slido.com and enter this code. You know, I can tell you something about feeling tired. That actually I found the past year that is totally amazing. So I have a son, he's 17 years old, and he is tired all day. And I couldn't get it, you know? So he comes home and he's tired and he throws himself somewhere to watch TV or to play a game, right? And I say, what is wrong with you? Oh man, I'm totally tired. But then he's playing these crazy games that are very demanding, right? And he thinks that that's entertainment, right? So, and actually he said to me once, Dad, I don't know from where you get so much energy. I mean, I'm supposed to be the old guy, he's the young guy, right? And that kept me thinking, and I found that entertainment doesn't necessarily give you energy, right? Energy you get from making exercises, from moving your body, not from thinking. Anything that makes you think makes you feel tired. So basically, the feeling of being or lazy or tired has a very simple solution, and it's stop what you are doing and go run or ride your bicycle or make something for you. And you are going to be surprised. I tested this the past year with my bicycle, and it's incredible, the amount of energy that you get. So tiredness is lack of energy. It is not tiredness, really. Right? You get tired when you go with your bicycle for 100 kilometers, then you are tired and you go home and you sleep like a baby, right? That's tiredness. But when you feel like tired and you can't sleep, that's not tiredness. That's a lack of energy. So what you need to do is to get energy in. Okay, 68% of us are curious. That's on me. I hope I don't disappoint you. Great enthusiasm. I'm feeling actually super great. You know, I didn't come to this city for at least 3 years, if I'm not wrong. This is my second time here, and I just came here for you. I really want to pass the voice about this kind of theory of fear and how to beat it. Thank you for answering. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain you how the whole thing works. Okay, so as we said before, failure happens, right? So it can be a big catastrophic failure. It can be a small thing like I didn't call my customers and the ones that owe me money, so I don't have money in my bank account. Simple things are also considered failures here. Now, the question, can we learn from failure? As I mentioned before, there are certain things that we can learn, of course, but we basically can always ask an additional question to learn more from failure. It is, what kind of resistance or what kind of fear stopped me from solving the issue or the problem before? Okay? So, when failure happens, right, I also mentioned you face your fears. So if we go, for example, to the personal side, an ugly divorce, how do you feel the next day after the divorce? You feel like, oh my God, right? All my fears are now in front of me. What my parents are thinking about me, what am I going to do? Am I going to find another couple? God knows what goes through your mind. So, you know, failure pushes you to face your fears. But if we don't recognize, if we don't try to recognize the fear, they just go. And we find ourselves somehow again in a similar situation, right? When I was moving to Europe, my friends were telling me, don't forget that you take your shit with you. So going out of the country doesn't mean that you are going to be clean and new. All your problems are traveling with you as well, and 100% right. So that's that. Okay, there's a cycle of things that happen all the time that are very similar, mistakes that we do that are very similar, kind of a pattern, that is the clue for us to discover where the fear is. Now, when we fail, and we find some of our fears, and we tell the story, something amazing happens. I tested this for the past 7 years. Empathy happens. So there are two definitions for empathy. One kind of empathy is the emotion of empathy, so how you feel it, right? But the other is the instinct. How do you trigger the instinct of empathy? And it's showing vulnerability. Okay, so if I tell you one of my crazy stories of failure, and I'm completely authentic about this, you are going to 100% connect with me. It is a magical trick. All the normal boundaries that we create around ourselves are shattered, and suddenly the communication goes very smoothly. So that is the reason why I continued with this topic of fear for so many years. Because I thought, oh my God, empathy is the solution to all the problems of the world. That's why we cannot communicate each other. That's why we cannot make steps forward when we know that we have problems that we need to solve. We are resisting it, we are not communicating authentically, or we are not understanding each other. When going to talk to companies about this stuff, it is incredible what happens when a small group of team shows vulnerability. What happens after is magical. So that's a tip for you. So when you tell the story authentically, empathy happens. A clear communication, and most incredibly, you start building community. And building community not as having a collection of names and emails, but building community as persons you can trust. Or and you know, for example, with Kathy, we are writing messages for years, here and there. It's not that it's very common. But if it wouldn't be because of her, I would not be here today. Right? So that's what I mean about community. Right? So you can communicate authentically with others to connect. You can express what you need, the others recognize it. Right? But what happens if I come to sell you a cheap product right now? So in the middle of my presentation, I say, hey, 50% offer, I'm selling skateboards. You immediately find that there's something that is not going right. You immediately find that everything that I said before was a trick. You know? So we have a detector for not being, for the moments when we are not authentic, right? We know it. Because we are not authentic all the time, right? When I'm driving my car in the highways in Slovenia, I'm often pissed off at the guys that come and pass me, right? And I'm yelling and making fingers and everything. But then when I'm in a rush and I'm passing the others and someone else does the same to me, you know, I feel like they are guilty, not me, right? You are going slow, what? We're in the highway. So we are always doing the same kind of things, each one of us, and that's how we can recognize when someone is being authentic or not. Cool. So, look, we identified our fears, right, through failure. We connect with people, we share our stories, we build community. So what's the role of fear? The crazy thing is that fear is not really telling you to stop. Basically, fear is telling you, attention, change. That's it. The part where fear is created doesn't have language, doesn't speak. So fear cannot tell you what to do. When you get that fear, who tells you what to do is your thinking mind, is your experience. Right? So the role of fear is telling us that there's change. Right? And as more fear or more resistance as you feel, as more obvious is to you that there is a change of a change in front of you. And basically, and I can grant it, when you feel that resistance to not do something, but that you know that you should do, right? But it's too risky or something, do it. And you will see what happens and how you feel. Right? You are going to feel like, yes, I did it, finally. And you're going to discover a completely new world of possibilities that you were not considering before. And then when you compare entrepreneurship with everything that we talked about, why do you have to be an entrepreneur? Well, of course, because I need money, you could say, right? Of course, that's one of the reasons. But entrepreneurship, the word entrepreneurship, is not defined for startups. It's much older than startups. The word entrepreneurship is about starting something, taking the risk. Jules Verne, the writer, in all his books of adventure, he was calling the adventurers entrepreneurs. And you know what's the common thing? All of them didn't know they are entrepreneurs. They found themselves in an adventure and they had to make the best out of themselves. It is what happens to us. But now we have this game that is called business entrepreneurship, let's say, right? That includes the characteristic of challenging yourself to achieve something, right? It can be money. Why not? But the real thing, me as an entrepreneur since I'm 17 years old, I can tell you, you never stop learning, you never stop failing. It's just crazy. It's constant struggle, right? You put yourself all the time in uncomfortable situations, and you continue. So, to me, entrepreneurship is a decision. And it's a decision to face your fears, right? To get used to it and to know what to do with this. Objectives are different. If the objective is making money, well, there are things to learn about this, right? But in general, every entrepreneur is constantly facing the fears. When you say, I don't know what is going on. I did everything what I could, and I'm not getting the money. Well, that's the fear. That's the challenge. That's exactly what you need to learn, right? That's the step that you need to do. It's not as easy as saying, okay, let's make money then. No, it is what is preventing you from making money. And there is where we go to incredible things. What happens after the understanding and having a very clear a personal view of what entrepreneurship means to you, you are going to see that this constant process is producing innovation. You are constantly innovating. You cannot get comfortable with where you are, right? And when the years pass, you become a living example. You went through it. Maybe you are not a rich guy or the most millionaire person in the country, but everybody knows what you did. You become a role model. And you become a role model that the people can connect with. If you become a star, #1 in the world, right? It's harder to connect with you. Because the people will assume, yeah, but he has money, right? They don't ask how he started, or she started. But when they see that what's your story, what you went through, what's the whole process, your path as an entrepreneur, they can connect. And even if you don't want to say something or share too much, you will see that the others are going to take inspiration on you. That process produces wisdom. And amazingly, wisdom is not knowledge. Wisdom is being capable of behaving as a child despite your knowledge. So it's basically going back, right? So can you play? Can you have time for yourself and be irresponsible? Okay. So I'm sure that if you know older people, sometimes they are a bit silly, they are playful, and the ones that are like that are considered wise people. So that's a whole explanation for me. Oops. Okay. So far, do you have any question or comment? No? Still curious? Okay. You are going to have a copy of this slide deck, okay? But what I need you to think about now is to create a short definition for these words. So I'll give you like 2 minutes to think about and try to define. So what does it mean, failure, fear, empathy, entrepreneurship, innovation, and wisdom for you? And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask a few of you, which are your definitions? So, of course, the answers that you are going to have for the definition of these words are now influenced by what I said earlier, right? So you have been framed into thinking similar definitions to the ones that I made, okay? Now, the idea is that you take those words home whenever you can, write your most authentic definition. Do not compare it with this one. Create your own definition and keep the definitions there somewhere. Update them whenever you can, because you will see that in time you are going to be upgrading the definitions of those words. So if you are working and you would like to be entrepreneurial, I'm not talking about business, but about the attitude, right? Constant challenge, right? You are going to see that these words are going to be very, very important for you. And you are going to find other words that are also important and that you need to define. And I'm going to tell you in a while why. Can someone share? Does someone have a very different definition to the ones that are written here?
It's a very personal thing, failure. So I approach failure less as what others think about it, and I didn't deliver. So I see it as a very personal thing.
So when you don't deliver, right?
So I take that as a failure, not an outside perspective.
So for you, the failure is in relation to the expectations of others.
Expectations that I set for myself. So it's
okay.
Really personal.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Someone else?
Yeah, to me, failure is not being able to deliver, like achieve the goals. And the fear is always, am I doing enough?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm not doing enough, maybe I can do more. And the empathy part is actually I'm doing quite a lot. So just to get the balance right.
Yeah. So, exactly. And you know, when you start defining all these words, you start finding out how you're becoming victim of your own definitions. You know, because for example, if someone comes to tell me, my father comes and tells me, you are not a success. You are already 40 something, and what is going on with you? Oh my God, that happened like 4 years ago, and I felt like a piece of crap. But that was the first time that I managed to tell to my father, actually, you are wrong. I'm not a failure, right? And I explained and blah, blah, blah. But when our definitions are created in relation to the expectations of others, to the results of our acts and actions, right? It's very easy for others, even if they don't want to, manipulate us and take control over our emotions. But when you create your own definitions, you start getting solid ground to defend yourself when you feel that someone is crossing the boundaries. You know, creating definitions is one step to change the way you feel your emotions. It enriches your thinking process. Therefore, you can be very grounded. You can be very, you can have your own position, you know? So when you think that you are failing because you got disappointed, you didn't deliver, you didn't, with yourself, whatever, right? You can start finding out that you read that from what others are telling you. But then you start creating your personal philosophy, you know? Because when you say, this is not failure, this was not really failure. Indeed, I disappointed these persons and I'm going to apologize for that, right? I would love to do something better, I will. So I'm not quitting, as you said, right? I'm going to persist. But when you don't have a clear definition, it's very easy to not persist. It's very easy to quit because you don't know why. Well, if you have no money in the bank and you know that you have to get out of this job, are you going to get out? Very difficult, right? Okay, start updating your definitions and you will see that the decision-making process is enriched in an incredible way. You will know, you will be able to be so confident, like to say, I'm staying in this job because I need the money. I'm going to talk with my boss. My boss can fire me if she wants, right? That's it. But what I want to do is this, and that. It's clear, and I can share this with everybody. I'm not hiding, and I'm feeling great about being honest. And you know what happens? When you are being authentic, the others, as I said before, can connect with you. They understand what you want to do, and they might even help, right? So, definitions. How emotions are made. So, this is so amazingly important. Can you see the emotion in this lady? Right? It's amazing, right? It can make you cry if you're in the mood. So, how do you think emotions are made? Any clue? What's the process?
Thinking.
Please.
It's some kind of analysis to something we feel, smell, see, and then our brain analyze that and create something in our body. Chemicals.
Super, excellent.
Yeah, I just added that it's our thinking and connecting it to previous memories as well.
Exactly. So more than emotions being there as part of our humanity, they are there as part of our culture, right? So we build emotions. So if I'm telling you, for example, I'm enthusiastic, you are going to connect the word enthusiastic with your emotion of enthusiasm. It doesn't mean that we're feeling the same thing. You know? So that's a very important thing. The other important thing is that the emotion, so let's say, your perception is what starts the whole process. Okay? So you observe something. This perception is received by your brain, right? And your brain just receives the data. It's like the camera receives the photons, or I don't know what. Okay, so it's raw. It doesn't say anything. It is everything what is around you right now is in your brain. But then your brain needs to pay attention to what you are focusing on. So it disregards all the rest and continues in the focus. At that moment, that perception is understood, compared, processed. and then your body creates the emotion that you are experiencing. Why is this important? First of all, to know that we might feel very similar, that we might call it different, right? And because the emotion comes out, so the definition of your emotion comes out of a process in your brain, that means that if you have better tools or more tools to process that information, you're going to experience your emotions in a much richer way. Do you understand? Have you heard that the old Greeks couldn't see the blue color? So it is supposed that they were not managing to see the blue color. They would call it dark green or something like that. And the reason is because they didn't have the word blue. So in the same way, if we don't have concepts in our brain, we just don't perceive that. So when you create your definitions, as I suggested before, and you understand how emotions are made, you are going to be capable of enriching the way you create your own emotions. So the next time that you fail at something, and this thing that is happening again and again, right? You don't feel depressed. Because you already know how the process is happening. It is not an automatic thing. It is not that you are a depressive person or an anxious person. It's that you are experiencing something because you are not changing it. As soon as you change the definition, you start changing the ways you are going to experience it. Any question? Okay. So, I was telling you that when you share your story of failure, something wrong that happened, and it's very authentic, you connect with the people, right? Now, I've been coaching teachers or professionals to speak about their failures. And it's amazing. I will tell you what happens, okay? So, first of all, you tell them, tell me a story of failure, something that went wrong. Okay. They already have it in their head. Because actually, they were already telling that story before. It is full of makeup. You know? It is absolutely gorgeous story. And then you just need to make a few questions, like for example, and how were you responsible for that? Right? Because the story is normally telling about what happened around, the economy, the taxes, or whatever, right? And then how were you responsible for this? The face change, and they start thinking, well, you know, I could do things better. Me as a manager. Okay, but what did you do wrong? Why you didn't react before this happened? No, I knew it was happening. Exactly, why? They don't have the answer. Just like that, it's not coming, right? So, as soon as they find how they were responsible in some way for what happened, they are able to tell the story from their heart. And at that moment is when empathy happens and the whole process that I mentioned before. So the stories always are presenting some kind of a challenge, some kind of a solution or resolution, always. Right? Any kind of story that is interesting to listen. So if you find what is the core of that story, you are going to identify the fears that were on the back of it. Always. You don't have to be precise on defining the fear. How do I call this? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a name for it. And that fear is going to start changing in time. You are going to be upgrading the definition to that fear as well. Until it just poof, goes away. I was telling to Kathy earlier that at the beginning I was very scared to speak in public. Terrorized. I'm the kind of person that goes to a discotheque and goes to one corner, get a beer, and I'm alone there. Even if my friends are around. I have days of I cannot be with people. And at the beginning of speaking, I was terrorized. So now I don't feel nervous at all. Right? That's a fear that just went away. It has been modified, right? Cool. So, group with 4 persons. And okay, we're going to do something different. Think about a story, each one of you. Think about a story of failure, your own story, okay, for 5 minutes. Then what we're going to do is you're going to group in 4, groups of 4, and one of the persons is going to share a story. How you choose which story, that's your problem. Okay? And then from the groups, I will choose 1 or 2 to come here in front and share this story with us. Deal? Okay, 5 minutes. So please, just stand up, group in 4, and start sharing, start deciding who's going to share the story with you. Okay, so probably, it doesn't matter, wait a second. So, I'm very happy that you were so enthusiastic to show and to tell your stories. So, I need to give you one more piece of information. Because now that you've heard a bit the story, I would like the persons that are listening to the story to become a bit more like coaches. Okay? So, basically you are going to help the person to prepare the story to share it in front. Okay? So, my technique is you normally have 5 spaces. Start with the introduction, the conclusion, and at the center is what I call the core of the story. And that core of the story normally is connected with what's the fear that created or motivated that story of failure. Okay? So try to coach the storyteller to divide the story in these 5 parts. Does it have to be strictly 5? Not really, but that's the suggestion. Okay? And take in consideration this. So you have to be making questions to try to get what the core of the story is. Right? How are you responsible for what happened? Remember that I mentioned before? Something similar. So you can use this as a suggestion. Okay, so you have a few minutes more. Let's say some 5 minutes more. Okay? Thanks.
No. Everybody can be. But also I was speaking about your story because you're writing to offer them something exactly. So maybe when you see that they are not like convinced, try to analyze what who they are, more like, I don't know, I mean not stopping them, but like,
I don't think you don't want to be obvious. So, for example, looking at their Facebook profile, I do that.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm not saying about that. Ah, okay. Ah, we find solutions. Ah,
we should try it. That's why I'm here.
you're sure. Yeah, I will tell you later what I
Yeah.
because it will take too much time now. Okay, sorry. Yeah, yeah. No.
But so what should we
No, I mean, you can take any story and then we. I do this all the time. So I think I will go to somebody else. My job. This part, this storytelling, I do this all the time. That's my job.
I built story almost like this. I mean, skin. So, and I finish with learnings and conclusions and fears.
You skipped over that. The fear part. When did it start? For example, if I have to reiterate your story, I would say, well, we were doing this crypto thing 2 years back, and we were building up to it, and then we were going 1 year, we were looking at the market, everything was going up. So that's the build-up part. Sorry? That you tell, when did it trigger? When do you identify it as a failure? After the event, before the event, on the day of event, like, oh, holy shit, what is happening?
But experience is not
Where did the fear come kick in?
when you start to settle, all this
For that story, in that moment when it crashed, when did you personally felt the fear? Okay, something doesn't feel right. So this was not supposed to be. What the hell have I done? What I'm gonna do now? Because otherwise it's just a thing that happened.
We have 1 more minute. 1 more minute. We have 1 more minute. Okay? I know.
well, actually, but my fear is also based on I
We have 1 more minute. Okay?
and try to develop
1 more minute.
and for me I think the biggest failure is not achieve this
This is your vision, which you didn't achieve.
When it came?
We have 1 more minute. Okay?
Sure. I mean, are we doing the 5 stories or are we building one?
We're building 1, and I'm going to choose from you.
So you know the story, more or less, or you're still like thinking about it. You have to find it. You have to find the story. If you don't find the story,
Okie dokie.
yesterday I was like thinking about fears
it's the most difficult way to find those stories.
You know why you cannot stop talking? That you really know? That's empathy. You know? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have to cut it there. Please come sit down.
Thank you.
So, first question, the people in your group are persons that you know?
No.
No, right? So how the hell were you sharing your stories with them?
You asked us to.
So simple, right? This is exactly the point. This is exactly the point. When you start sharing from your heart, it's unstoppable. This is true. We were in Vienna, in the Impact Hub Vienna, in one of these events, a long time ago. And there in Austria, they are very strict with the timings. And actually, they called the police to throw us out. I couldn't take the people out of the venue. And the Impact Hub Vienna is around some apartment buildings. So some of the owners said, okay, it's past the time, call the police. And they knocked the door and they said, you have to get out. Can you believe? That's empathy. It happens that way. Don't forget this thing, because that can help you structure your conversations in the future. The idea, now that you know how it works, you could do it more times, right? You don't need to take a photo, so you're going to receive everything. I will share with you one link to download this and some other tools. So we are going to hear 3 stories. Just try to make them short. Let's see who wants to volunteer. Okay, please. Now, for the audience, a couple of instructions. Put your coaching hat, think about his story, and be completely respectful of what he's going to say. Okay, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Naimun. I work as a business advisor at Companion and advise around 500 startups and entrepreneurs every year in Stockholm. I also run my own startups and tech investments. What I wanted to share with you, what I was sharing with my team was that one of the first startups that I ran, we created it with a lot of energy. It was a very passionate team, but it went belly up in 9 months, despite all our passion and everything. And we didn't understand, it went up very fast in the first 3 months, and then it completely tapered off, and then for 6 months we were struggling to just put some breath into it. No, get up. But it eventually died and we disbanded it. When we sat down later, because it was a group of friends that we created it, and we said, what really happened? So we realized that we created a product which had a very high attention, like people liked the way the product was presented and marketed, but when they actually got the product, they said, oh, this is a shitty product. So we had very high attraction, and that happened with many startups that I now coach, that we tend to create products in a bubble. So for us, it was that when we were creating this product at a very fast pace, we didn't listen to the end consumers. It was a product for university students, and we said, okay, we have all been in universities, we can do it. I left university like 15 years ago and others, and we created it based on our experiences, which were probably no longer relevant for the people we were creating it. So what we were doing was, we were afraid that if we bring outside feedback into the product development cycle, it will do something very different to our product. So we were very much focused on the idea of creating our version of the product that will work. One of the team members who was in the development side, he was very good in development, and whenever we talked about it, he said, makes sense, but we can park it on the side for now. My role on the team was to get everybody aligned, so I just kept it, okay, let's keep the motivation up. If there is some negative feedback, we can just keep it there. And we were living in a bubble, which was, because we were all good at marketing, so we were marketing, and we were listening very positive feedback from this bubble, but we were not going outside the bubble. Yes.
How are you responsible for that?
I was responsible, as I said, as a head of the board, to get the company running, team running.
Yeah,
so for me,
how are you responsible for not succeeding? What
Yeah.
in you prevented you from succeeding?
for me, it was very important to make the startup a success. And my priority was, if this team can do it, we can do it. So probably I weighted the team inside more than the customer inside. But actually the team is not buying the product. Or we were not the buyers, we were the creators. The buyer is on this side, and if they are not picking it up, it will just go down.
Okay. Please.
Did you feel like you connected personally to the thing that you were producing, the things you were creating? Because usually, I don't know.
Very good question. Yes, we felt very passionate about it. But as I said, the startup was created by people in my age. So we had left university time long time ago. And the way, and at that time when we left university, they were not digital, we didn't have digital communities, Facebook was not there, even Facebook was not there. So our experiences, our own passion of the product or the way it should be structured probably was completely out of sync from what the market needed.
Okay, so just let me tell one thing and then we finish the first presentation, okay?
Yeah.
It looks to me like the fear can be in the question, why you didn't go to the customer when you know that that's an essential, right? So what prevented you, what stopped, what you were resisting, you and your team, right? To go to the customer. And when you find the real answer in you, first in you, you get a clue, right? Then when it's a collective, when we're talking about a group of people, you have to identify what is the collective fear, the collective resistance. And you are going to be surprised because you are going to identify that every person in your group agreed to not do that without words, without consciously knowing. But they said, yeah, you know, we're more developers, we're more...
It's just not our thing to do.
Exactly, so, you know, it's going to be so cool that actually the people will get to know it.
I think that's an excellent point, and that's, I think, one of the key learnings, because that startup taught me a lot of things on how to create startups. And when I meet entrepreneurs, always talk to them, take your time, read the market, iterate the product based on the feedback, because you might have a version of the product which actually has no sync in the market reality. So it's a lot of insight coming out. So we learned a lot.
Super. Thank you so much. Who is next?
I can.
Please.
Okay, so my name is Somil Gupta, and so far I've been leading the business development in Nordics for Bosch, but not for the appliances business, but for the AI and the digital business. And now I've started as an entrepreneur. I'm going to start in September formally. I'm on my way out. The failure that I had experienced in the last 2 years was that I have been able to make great connects with people. I mean, I know the CEOs and the COOs and the vice presidents, but somewhere I was not able to relate or convert that connect into business. So there were some successes, but then it was not as much or as fast as I had hoped for. And for me, it was the uncertainty, the fear really kicked in, because I knew that this is not going to sustain. So a lot of people told me, yes, Nordics is difficult, it takes time, but then somewhere deep down, I know that I don't believe that crap. I mean, people have stories, but I know that it's a lot of potential and growing market, and if there is anywhere there's opportunities, it's here. So then what was it? And in December last year, I then finally said, you know what, maybe this is not working out for us, so we want to shut down the Nordic operations. So for me, that was a wake-up call. That was kind of, you know, it was, I had expected it again, but not anticipated it to happen so soon. So that's the source of fear. And the last 6 months, For me, it was like about understanding what I'm gonna do, and I realized, okay, I'm done with this. Let me start on my own. And I always thought that when I start my entrepreneurship journey, it will be planned, and I'm gonna do this 2-year, 3-year planning. It didn't work out, so it had to happen like that. Looking back, in terms of the fear which I felt is that I think I was too concerned about making myself seem valuable to them, rather than really understanding their problems and their what is that they actually want. So somewhere I was so busy talking and wowing them that I think felt. And now I feel a little bit of a challenge in connecting. I feel that I'm not able to connect with them at a human level. I feel if I call them, because I might upset them, or sometimes I feel that I'm not really able to connect with them at a human level. And that's for me, let's say, the challenge.
Super. So, you know how much time people in companies uses to try to do what you did? There's a book that talks about this called A Culture for Everybody, and if I'm not wrong, it's 60%. 60% of the salaries go for people to think how they can do to please others. So that's the main source of savings for a company, if we would be able or capable of going straight and do the things that we have to do. But unfortunately, we are trained to do what you did. Spending time thinking, how am I going to be valuable?
Yeah.
I want to show myself
Yeah.
as well, instead of being valuable based on their expectation. It is very hard, so this is really, really good. And I don't know if you noticed, but your audience was, right? So that's exactly the thing. When you're authentic, when you're capable of telling what is the real thing, people connect.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first time I kind of realized this, so it was also aha moment for me. Then I okay, maybe that was the issue.
Super. Thank you so much. Okie dokie. I think that we will have to let it in two, because we are going to be running out of time, and I have still a lot of things to share with you. We finish at 9, right? Okay, so we're going to go fast from here. So please replicate these kind of conversations and presentations with your own teams. They're going to find out how useful they are. And if you make them in regular basis, even better. Okay? And you were talking about the circumstances, for example. So my recommendation would be try to go deeper and start not from we, but from me. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you something that I call vision of present. Okay? I'm going to go fast on this. So vision of present sounds like a riddle, right? Because vision is connected with the future, not with the present. But when, the theory in the back of this word is that if you grow every day, right, you end up being a bigger tree than what you could imagine, right? So it is not only about where you want to go, but how do you represent that vision in the present. And I found a way that is pretty awesome. Before that, let me make a fast review of these things that we saw before. So you learned the path of entrepreneurship from this perspective of fear and sharing your stories. You know of the importance of creating your own definitions and actually writing them down and keeping track of them. Because you know how emotions are made, and you would like to improve the way that you feel those emotions in order to relate better with your experience of life. And you had a very fast experience of how storytelling can help you identify fear. Okay? But there in the other side we have the lotus flower, right? And the lotus flower is very special because the plant doesn't flower if there is no mud. Okay? So that's the whole thing. what's the mud that is going to make you flourish? If you fail and keep accumulating your failures, but you forget about them, if you let them aside, the mud is not with you, right? You need to use that as fertile ground, but not just to analyze the circumstances, but to analyze what is your deepest relation with that story. So, in the context, we're not going to make this one, but I'm going to tell you how to do it, okay? So, in order to connect the whole thing, so, and trying to be in the present, the first thing that you need to do is to imagine what your future should look like. I learned this in a workshop with IBM, and they said a very simple thing. Imagine the full day on your 70th birthday, right? So with whom you wake up. Are you still in the same house? Who are you going to invite or not? Are you going to celebrate? Which kind of car do you have? Are you a father, a mother? The whole situation. You pay attention to the whole day, imagine the whole thing. Then, when you have this in your mind, this is what you need to do. You have to identify 5 important elements of that visualization. Okay? Like, for example, now I live close to a lake. Right? That's part of the things, and that captures your attention. Because right now you live in the middle of the city, for example. Right? So, and then you have to connect it with a value or a principle. Okay? That's sometimes a bit hard to define, but be generous with yourself, so you can be general. Like, for example, time for myself. Time for myself, but that's not a value. So that what could be the value? For me, it's freedom. I want to have the freedom of taking my boat and going to the lake. Okay, so freedom is important to you. And then the 5 important elements, right? You connect them with the values. So, hear this carefully. The connection between your vision of future, so what you want to achieve, is not what you want to achieve, are the emotions that achieving it could give you. And those emotions are connected with your values. Have you heard, how many times you heard core values? It's everywhere, right? In every book. Which are your core values? Identify your core values, blah, blah, blah. This is it. So now that you know which are your core values, you are going to be able to perform activities in the present, today, you know, to fulfill those values. So you repeat which are the 5 values that you wrote, and which are the actions that you can do every single day. And you're going to be surprised with the result and how connected that is with your work. Not only with your life in general, but also with your professional life. So once you have this stuff, you're going to get a sense of, amazing. I finally verbalize, I finally realize what is this thing that I want to do. Then, what you have to do, instead of going forward with your imagination, you have to go backwards. Okay, so what did I do the past year that was important? 1 year before. When was the first time I had a kiss? When was the first time I shaved? When was the first time, or the last time that I hear my parents telling me something nice? Until the beginning, until as far as you can remember. And you are going to find that there is a connection between all those memories and the current version of yourself. That line is your purpose. So, for example, a friend of mine was laughing because she said, I cannot believe I've been trying to make people happy all the time. I remember myself dancing in front of my parents and their guests at home just because I wanted to see them smile. And today I'm a musician and I'm doing exactly the same thing. That's my purpose. So it sounds silly, right? I want to make people smile. But that's the whole thing that connects her life. And that's how, connected with the values that she has, she can live a present moment that builds up every day. And she has the capacity of going back home from her job and feel like, yes, I did it today, once more. Because achieving your values every day is something that is very easy to do. It's not so complicated. I'm organizing one challenge. I invite you to go to this website and give a check. If you're interested, let me know. Now, this is the link that you have to take note in order to download the PowerPoint. And I prepared a few canvases that can help you with the vision of present, right? Formulating the vision of present. And there's additionally another canvas that can help you creating a discipline for every day. So how do you use all the information that I shared with you today to create your day-to-day discipline? So you have to change your discipline. If you want to grow, you have to change it, right? And you have to adapt it to what your values are, what your vision is. Okay, that's it. There you have my email. So if you have some question, if you would like to go deeper into some of the topics, I'm very happy to answer. Thank you so much.